Hello, everybody, and welcome to Some Patches Required, a show where we hope to educate and entertain you on the ever-turbulent games industry. My name is Zach, and I'm one of your hosts.
And my name remains Aaron, and I am your other host, saying "and" a lot.
And before we jump in, another "and," I just wanted to say thank you to all of our returning and our new listeners. You all are amazing. Love cannot express the feelings that I feel for you in this exact moment. And before I gush grannies, or whatever the saying is, I also wanted to say, please like and subscribe. We also appreciate that. It helps us know that we don't suck, and that's helpful for our emotions. And then lastly, I would just say, please recommend us to a friend or a mortal enemy. We definitely appreciate that too. This sounds so canned. But yeah, no, seriously, any support, all support, super appreciated. Please like and subscribe. Support the show. Recommend it to a friend. Thank you for listening. This week, we are going to be talking about Game Pass and the recent price hike. Yeah, Game Pass again. We actually talked about it last year for a similar reason. The price last year went up, and it was not as big of a hoopla as this time. I also did just want to do a quick call out that as our show and at least our release cadence has kind of gone through hell, as I'm sure you've all noticed, Aaron and I are not dying, I promise. The games industry has decided to implode upon itself with news. We are very aware of the EA purchase. We will probably discuss that at some point.
Yeah. Plans sort of percolating for that one. The reality of that story is that it's big, huge, giant, large, and something that we didn't feel like we could necessarily do justice to with the turnaround time that we left ourselves for this episode. So stay tuned for potential more discussion on that front here coming up soon. That story is going nowhere anytime soon and represents its own unique brand of hell that I think we probably won't quite be able to resist dipping our snoots into at a certain point. But for this week, this episode, we're gonna talk about Game Pass because Jesus.
Yep. And as we jump into that discussion, we wanted to ask, are you planning on canceling your Game Pass subscription? Do you think that $30 a month for Game Pass is reasonable? Those are our two questions to kind of prompt our discussion this morning. And I guess that kind of leads into the story, which is Game Pass Ultimate has increased in price from $20 a month to $30 a month. This is in comparison to if you would have looked at the price for Game Pass Ultimate 2 years ago before the price increase in 2024, I believe it was $16. I need to look at my notes to validate whether that was true. Okay, sorry, It was actually $17. But that was a 15% increase in 2024 from $17 to $20. Which this year we're doing a full 50% increase, $10 more expensive for Game Pass Ultimate. People are pissed.
Yeah, the general consensus, to put it mildly, has been negative. People are not pleased with this particular price hike, and I don't think it's that hard to see why. And there's a lot of nuance to the conversation surrounding value when it comes to this that we'll dig into momentarily. But the largest element of the conversation, I think, has been for years. And Game Pass is now, like 7 or 8 years old total as like an extant product?
Yeah, it's coming up on 10, as in it's closer to 10 than it is to 5.
Yeah. Which is wild that much time has passed. Because I remember when this whole concept began, and it seemed like such a bizarre sort of, I mean, really, it was a game-changing sort of model, and may still yet prove to be. We don't know exactly where this is going to go, but for the longest time, the catchphrase that was assigned to Game Pass was the best value in gaming. Every headline that you'd see was like, oh, even with the price hikes, Game Pass is still the best value in gaming, because you have this Netflix-esque catalog of dozens to hundreds of high quality games that you just have access to for a reasonable monthly cost. And no model like that had really been attempted before. And I think the general, again, not to reuse the phrase too much, but the general consensus is the idea that this is the best value in gaming has sort of been shattered now, because the $30 a month has pushed Game Pass past other comparable subscription models, both in and outside of the gaming space. And yeah, it represents a pretty dramatic change to the value to the consumer. Zach, you are still, I think, an Xbox Game Pass subscriber.
Yeah, I still subscribe to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. I will probably be canceling my monthly subscription, mostly because I'm not even as critical of it as some of the people are. But just diving into the annual numbers, when you look at the fact that Game Pass Ultimate is now $360 annually at the new price point.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit much. The math that I used to do in my head is I'd be like, okay, well, what's the annual cost and how many free games does that get me a year? Right? So as an example, when it was it was at $20, it would have been when it was at $20 over an annual period, it would have been roughly divided by 70, right? Because premium games largely cost $70. It would have been 3.5 games. That's how many games you would need to be able to get off of the platform. So like 4 games a year that you would play for it to make sense. And it did make sense for me at that point. I would play certain games like Forza. When Starfield came out, I didn't buy Starfield. I just played it on Game Pass. When Avowed came out, I believe I also played that on Game Pass. So there were all these games that were coming out, and I was getting at least 4 a year. So that made sense. At $360 a year, doing that quick math divided by 70, that's over 5 games. And it's starting to get to the point where it's like, do I play that many games on Game Pass a year? I know that may not sound like a big increase, but it's enough of an increase that I'm having the conversation in my head. And I think one of the things that really contextualizes it is growing up, Aaron, a lot of consoles would have cost us $360.
Yeah.
And so looking at a subscription fee that I don't use, candidly, the majority of the time, makes it a little bit less approachable for me.
No, I completely agree. I think that without getting too much into the full opinion side of things, the value proposition there, you now need to spend more time playing games in order to make the value make more sense, which isn't necessarily the way that you want to interact with something like this. We're talking about the price of somewhere between 5 and 6 premium games, AAA launch games priced at a $70 price point, in order to extract the equivalent value of just purchasing those games. And it is an important caveat that when you purchase a game, despite the fact that most people now buy digitally and you're not actually buying the product, you are purchasing a license to the product, so they can always technically revoke your access to that license, as we've discussed before. ostensibly, though, you do get to keep those games when you purchase them. You don't cease having access to Forza Horizon 5 if you stop paying for it in December because things get a little bit lean buying Christmas gifts, right? You just have a copy of it that you can install and uninstall at your leisure. There's a problem. If Xbox can manage to, like, as a brand, put out an equivalent number of high quality first party games and stuff that justifies paying for the ultimate tier for those day one releases, which is still, I think, the biggest draw of the ultimate tier, because they did also make a change to that, which is important to note, that the day one releases are now only on the ultimate tier. So you do have to pay that $30 a month in order to play first party release titles on day one, which I think has always kind of been one of the biggest draws of Game Pass, and certainly is one of their big, like, marketing tools that they use, especially at, you know, industry shows where they're announcing games. Oh, day one on Game Pass. Yeah, you'd need to have 5 or 6 of those coming out every single year, which, at least at the moment, it seems like Xbox may be able to hit that benchmark. But then it does become a matter of whether that's something you want to pay for more ephemeral access to rather than theoretical ownership of. And I think that sort of messes with the value proposition. But to your console point, the original Switch in 2017 launched at $300 flat. And granted, that was a very different time for very different, like 1,000 different reasons. But that was a $300 piece of hardware. Well, throw in a copy of Breath of the Wild and you've hit 360.
Well, even more recently, right? The Xbox Series S released in 2020 at $300. The original launch price of the Xbox Series S was less expensive than the subscription price for Game Pass Ultimate. And then I think the other thing that really illustrates this point of how expensive this is if you look at the most comparable subscription service, which is provided by PlayStation. It's PlayStation Plus Premium. It's a lot of P's. It is $160 annually. That is that is more than half. Sorry, it's easier to do it up. PlayStation or Xbox rather is more than double the price of PlayStation and their premium subscription service, which is crazy. They're $40 more expensive if you were to double the price of what PlayStation charges you right now. Granted, you know, PlayStation Plus, I don't think offers as much as Xbox does. We'll get into some of these specifics on the Xbox side at least, but that's still absolutely wild. The one thing I did want to mention, Aaron, to your original point though, is, or the point you just made, is that Xbox Game Pass, it's also this kind of fluid thing in terms of what is on Game Pass and what's not on Game Pass. So not only if you don't pay for Game Pass, you will lose access to certain games that you've been playing, but also those games could get taken off of Game Pass, especially if they're a third-party game that's on Game Pass, because all of that is a contractual agreement for that game to be on Game Pass. The developers could decide to rip it off Game Pass, and then suddenly you don't have the game. So there's another layer of kind of instability when it comes to, being able to maintain your games. I don't think that happens a ton with like the super premium, well-known games, but it's another variable for sure when it comes to game ownership.
Without a doubt, and it's certainly one of the biggest drawbacks to the streaming era of media consumption at large, where, if you went way back to the earliest days of Netflix as a streaming service, things were a lot more stable, right? Because Netflix was the biggest and for a while only player in that space, right? So if you wanted your stuff to be accessible to people for streaming, it was just on Netflix. And now everything is this constant carousel of content shifting between the different streaming platforms, to the point where unless it's something that's directly owned by one of those parent companies or part of like Netflix's seemingly never-ending slop mill, where it just pumps out algorithmic garbage to you for the sake of justifying the price point, and just keeping people watching constantly. You can never guarantee that the movie that was on Netflix last month that you wanted to watch will be there when you log on to Netflix today, because it's probably cycled through its licensing, arrangements to move over to Hulu or to move over to HBO or to move over to whatever it is. And yeah, it does create this sort of weird ephemeral relationship between you and the stuff that you pay for, where you are paying for access to a platform, not access to the content on that platform specifically. So yeah, it does become harder to quantify the value of what you have access to when it can change so fluidly. And yeah, it bums me out again that we've moved away from ownership of media back to a complete rental structure. But that is kind of a different conversation for a different day. To kind of dial back into comparable streaming services and their pricing models. Yeah, PlayStation Plus Premium. I am a subscriber of the lowest tier of PlayStation Plus because I candidly don't have enough time in my day or my week or my month, and by extension my year, to extract the value out of any of these services that I would need to in order to justify paying for them. So I pay for the lowest version of PlayStation Plus, so that way I can still gain access to those 2 or 3 free, in quotations, free games that you get every month that just kind of get added to your library, and then you can access at any point from here until essentially you stop paying for the service. But the PlayStation Plus Premium, again, does not have nearly as robust an offering as Game Pass does, and it's not really trying to. But it does start to sound like a much better value in comparison at a price that's, less than half of what Game Pass Ultimate costs. But to take it outside of the gaming space, I did go ahead and pull some numbers for comparable media streaming, namely Netflix, Hulu, HBO, and all of that sort of fun stuff. It's a good time. So Netflix, at its highest tier, which is really only differentiated from its standard tier by the access to 4K streaming, the number of things you can download, and the number of concurrent devices you can have streaming. The most expensive tier is $24.99 a month, or about $300 a year bundled, which is better in terms of just straight price. And the standard tier, which again is different from Game Pass's Ultimate down to whatever their middle tier is, and I can't remember what the name is at the moment, and I apologize for my unprofessional behavior.
I think it's Essential, Premium, and Ultimate, I think is how they do it. But
those also, the branding on those also changed since the last time we talked about this. But yeah, so their premium one does not include arguably one of the key draws, which is the day one access to those big AAA releases. Netflix does not withhold any content for its standard tier. It just doesn't offer access to 4K streaming, and the download counts and concurrent streams are limited. That costs $17.99 a month, which rounds out to about $216 a year, the way that they have it priced out. Okay. HBO Max, you get to, for their premium subscription service, you get to about $20.99 a month. And I don't know if they have an actual yearly bundle, so it comes out to about $209.99, which I think actually does mean it has a yearly bundle, so $209.99 a year. Disney plus Hulu, or sorry, rather just Hulu by itself, their ad-free tier is $18.99 a month with no yearly bundle, so about $228 a year. Bundle in Disney Plus on that, and it only actually goes up to $19.99 a month. bundle in on top of that an access to ESPN. So Disney Plus, Hulu, and ESPN as a bundle, and their premium version of that bundle, as of October 21st, 2025, that will go up to ding 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 $29.99 a month for access to the full library of ESPN content, which includes a lot of live stuff that sports fans obviously really, 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 really want. And sports obviously is its own weird beast because people will and always have been willing to pay exorbitant fees to access their sports. Sports fans will not allow cost to get between them and watching games. That's been a reality since before the days of premium cable. I have a weird memories of 1,000 NFL Sunday Ticket ads that used to run and back during the days of, cable versus satellite and all of those different things, where it was always, how much extra do you need to pay to get access to, your NFL games and ESPN and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, ESPN layered on top of Disney Plus, Hulu at their premium level finally gets you to roughly the cost of Game Pass Ultimate. And out of those larger players, I have yet to find anyone that comes in more expensive than Game Pass, meaning that Game Pass is really at the premium end of media subscriptions, just in terms of straight cost.
All you've taught me is, why the fuck am I paying for Netflix when it's more expensive than HBO? I mean, it's not exactly. I'm not paying for the highest tier of Netflix, but I think it's hell is frozen over. Netflix is more expensive, or has a more expensive tier than HBO, which is fucking wild to me. I will say, though, to your point, I don't think they're fully comparable subscriptions. I know the point of that is more to illustrate, like, what's another common subscription that you might pay for?
Yeah.
From a media perspective, and how does that compare to Xbox and what they're offering? I will say, and we buried this a little bit into the episode. To Xbox's credit, they are adding features, but I think that the features that they're adding starts an entirely different conversation, because they're adding, they're basically bundling, just like you mentioned all of the stuff with Hulu, adding Disney and ESPN. That's ultimately the route that Xbox has decided to go. And they're trying to say, oh, we're listening to customer feedback. We're not just increasing the price of, the subscription for the hell of it. Look at all this extra value. And some of the things that they're claiming to be extra value is the inclusion of Ubisoft Plus Classics, and also Fortnite Crew. Fortnite Crew, though, funnily enough, will not be added until November. So my main comment with some of that is, like, a lot of the value that they're adding, they're also apparently bringing on way more partners. There was something where they said they're, like, doubling the amount of partners they have releasing content on Game Pass, up to, I think it was like 270 partners. I wrote it down in my notes. I need to find it. But regardless of any of that, it's still, I completely was wrong. They added over 150 partners to expand the catalog, which I guess was like double what they had added last year. But to my point, do you play a ton? Well, actually, I do know you do play some Ubisoft games. I guess I got to speak for myself. I don't play a ton of Ubisoft games. I do play Fortnite. I don't play Fortnite consistently, though. So it's like, these value adds are really only useful if those are things you want. Otherwise, you're being forced into these bundles that you don't even care about. It's like if I was forced into a cable plan with sports on it, but I don't watch sports, but I'm paying to watch sports. And it's like, is that value if I don't use it? It's not. That's my opinion.
It's a good question, right? And to dial back for 2 seconds before I dive in on that, because that is a really good point. Yes, I had no intention of directly comparing the value proposition of a non-interactive media streaming service to an interactive media streaming service. Well, not streaming service, but subscription service. Because I genuinely don't think that we have enough time to dissect the value cross-section of games versus film and television, because there is a larger conversation to be had there, because, you know, development costs and the actual, like, access to purchasing a ticket to see a movie versus a copy of a video game, that's all worth talking about, but not something that we can really get into under the umbrella of this conversation. But yeah, in terms of the value adds that Game Pass is, or Xbox is trying to infuse Game Pass with in order to kind of soften the blow of this, it does kind of harken back to those days of cable packages, if people are, you know, if people remember that sort of thing, where you used to have just this you'd need a fucking CPA to help you figure out what you're supposed to do with all of these different bundles and add-ons and everything, because it was just a confusing nightmare of trying to pick and choose which channels you wanted to add into your bundle to have access to. And that level of granular control is really nice in terms of selecting the stuff that is specifically valuable to you, but it's also deeply confusing to the consumer on a which plan do I go with level. It becomes homework, and that sort of thing doesn't really sell in 2025, when it's a lot sexier and more streamlined to just have 3 different levels of access. The downside there, much like you just said, is that what they consider to be a value add is inherently only of value if it's of value to you. And in streamlining their offerings, they've removed your autonomy in choosing what is valuable to you. Because, yeah, I think that the Ubisoft Classics catalog is probably the best thing Ubisoft has going for it right now. I think that they have a strong back catalog of games that are largely evergreen and do pose, you know, they do offer value. The thing for me is you can pick most of those up for $6 on a Steam sale if you have access to a machine that can play PC games. So none of that is inherently of value to me, right? Like, every so often, if there's a sale going on Steam and I feel like playing through an old Assassin's Creed game or an older Far Cry game, and I'm willing to fork over $8 just to have access to that from now until whenever Steam decides to destroy everybody's library and cause a civil war. Because good God, that would be a nightmare. Yeah, I mean, I think I would just rather go with it that way, because I'm not going to be playing those games as my primary game, most likely. And I'm also not going to be playing multiples of those games simultaneously. So I can't really see why. I mean, I sure as shit wouldn't pay Ubisoft for recurring access to those titles when I can pick them up at a discount for keepsies, right? And then I get the Fortnite thing as well, because it is like the biggest goddamn game ever on the planet, and for a lot of people, having access to the benefits of Fortnite Crew is in and of itself a hugely valuable component to any sort of subscription. But for me, it's definitely not. And if it was up to me and I could shave whatever the actual specific value is of that, like as a blanket statement from the Game Pass subscription, I would love to do that. I would absolutely love to be able to shave that off, because I'm never going to fucking use it. I don't play Fortnite. I've played 2 matches of Fortnite in my life, and I've never felt older. I didn't understand it, I didn't like it, and I don't think the game is made for me on multiple levels. So for me, that's just a completely useless thing to put my money towards, and I would have no choice but to put my money towards it under this new model.
Well, you're wrong about Fortnite, because Fortnite's amazing. But you know, we'll hash that out later.
No, I mean, I'm sure Fortnite's incredible. It's just not for me.
I'm mostly tugging your leg. What I will say though is it's interesting because there was a Verge article talking about Microsoft revamps Xbox Game Pass plans and hikes Ultimate to $29.99 a month. In that, they're kind of breaking down all the different changes to all the different tiers because they did shift some stuff around. So like all the plans for Game Pass now have some level of cloud streaming games available. You only get the really high quality, though, of course, on the Ultimate version. Again, that's a thing that a lot of people don't take advantage of. So is that a value to do that if you don't care about cloud streaming? I'll let you decide. Yeah. But in that article, they do specifically mention that Ubisoft Classics and Fortnite Crew added into the bundle is a $28 value, Aaron. How could you be saying that Game Pass Ultimate is not worth it when you're getting $58 of value for $30, Aaron? That's so cruel. I'm, of course, being sarcastic here. I will say it does really feel like, to me at least, that Game Pass kind of feels like it's really trying to target those Fortnite players and be like, hey, you're already paying for Fortnite Crew. Why don't you add an extra, whatever it is, like $12 to this monthly subscription you pay? It might be $20 and get all these games. But then the interesting thing on top of that is a lot of the people that play Fortnite a lot only play Fortnite. They're not playing these other games a lot, which is kind of intrinsically against the idea of Game Pass. Game Pass is about playing a bunch of games, not one game religiously, which is an interesting point that Yang Ya brings up in one of his videos.
Yeah, it does feel like, specifically for me, it feels like a backwards value switch, right? Because for like I am the target market for Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. I grew up on the only 3 Indiana Jones movies that exist. I love them. I like machine games. I love what they've done with Wolfenstein. I like cinematic, single player story driven video games. With a little bit of ImSim flavor thrown in. I love that shit. That's the sort of thing that would draw me to Game Pass. That is absolutely the sort of thing that would draw me to Game Pass. But I don't really want to pay for the Fortnite stuff, right? So Game Pass then becomes an exceptional value for people who play a shit ton of Fortnite and want to add in the Indiana Jones and the Great Circles of the thing for an extra $12 or whatever it is. Because, again, if Fortnite Crew is where you're getting the core value, if access to those benefits is your core value, and then you're just getting the rest of it for like a modest add-on, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. That is a no-brainer deal. But in reverse, it sucks, right? Because the $28 of value that they're adding through, Ubisoft Classics and Fortnite Crew and EA Play and whatever, isn't great to me. So in that instance, my brain goes to, well, thank you very much. I'll just take the rest of it for $2.
Yeah.
if that's your $28, I'll just happily take the rest of it for $2. I'm fine with that deal. If you want to give me a copy of Indiana Jones and access to Avowed and others for $1.99 a month, I will absolutely take you up on that, Sarah Bond and Phil Spencer. That would be outstanding for me.
That is like
because
the funny...
the value doesn't work for me in that way.
Yeah, that is the funny thing. It's like, well, so if that's worth $28, you're saying Game Pass is the $2. Obviously, that's not the math they're doing, but it is kind of the funny thing of like, well, I don't care about the $28 of value, so can I get a discount? Because I don't want that. I did just look it up. Fortnite Crew is $12 per month.
So an $18 add-on.
Yeah. So it's like an $18 add-on. I would argue if you have both of those services, Fortnite Crew and Ubisoft, it does make it a more attractive offer. I mean, it at least basically means that you're just getting a slightly cheaper version of Fortnite Crew added on to what was the Game Pass Ultimate subscription.
Yeah.
So basically what we've been saying here value is very subjective. It's very hard for us to say like what is and is not worth it. I can only really speak for myself, but the internet has seemingly suggested that $30 a month for Game Pass Ultimate is too much. The majority of people that I have seen on the internet think that Xbox is overplaying their hand with this and that they're not adding enough value. And through doing this digging, Aaron and I have found evidence that we did not discover the evidence. We actually just read the evidence, but there is evidence that Xbox has actually been removing value from Game Pass. Perhaps the most egregious example to me personally is you used to get discounts, Aaron, on games through Game Pass, because the idea was, you were in this like premium membership. So let's say you were playing like Forza Horizon 5, right? Mm-hmm. You would get discounts to Forza. Jesus Christ. Forza.
That's the X-rated Forza.
Very different game. Lots of prostitution. Worse than GTA. You would get discounts to Forza because you had Game Pass. And the idea was you would play the game initially for air quotes free for the subscription fee. And then when you wanted to buy the game, you could get it at a discounted rate along with discounts on the DLC. Well, apparently, following a bunch of these changes, we've actually seen a removal of Game Pass discounts for game DLCs. So like you mentioned, Indiana Jones. That was one of the games that was mentioned as not having discounts anymore. Forza got brought up, and so did COD. These are fairly large games, and it is just 100%, regardless of how you slice it, a devaluation, whatever. You're devaluing the platform by getting rid of discounts, which was a huge part of even, I feel like, the way that Game Pass was sold to partners. Because what's more enticing, Aaron? Me saying, oh, you get on Game Pass and like you'll have access to all these players as part of our subscription, which there's been a lot of questions about which is actually better for developers. We've talked about that in previous episodes. But imagine like, okay, so you're going to get access to all these people and they might buy your game. So you're essentially like double dipping, right? Because you're getting money from being part of the subscription service and people playing your game. But then people are also just buying your game. Maybe not for full price, but, I don't know, 20% off or something, right? Like that's a pretty good deal.
And that's what PlayStation Plus does. If you have one of those higher tier memberships with PlayStation Plus, a lot of games come with, a 20% discount and whatnot. Percentages obviously float, but that is of legitimate value and of legitimate lasting value. And it does kind of amplify the service, not just as access to a catalog, but as sort of a VIP card, sort of a better value version of the Power Up Pro card from GameStop back in the day, where your GameStop membership would get you a reasonable discount on especially pre-owned games. And it for a small monthly fee. And that being gone demonstrably removes value from the service, and it demonstrably removes lasting value from the service, because again, those purchases take the ephemerality out of the shifting landscape of a subscription model, right? Having access to a discount card is a good value, as opposed to, theoretically having access to a game that can be revoked at really any time based on licensing agreements. That is not great. I think that they probably figured people just wouldn't notice, but the internet is very hungry for reasons to be mad.
Yeah, the internet, which is famous for not, combing through everything the minute they get mad at something. Whether that be valid or not. Yeah, that's just it. No, I think you're right. They probably didn't expect that. Granted, I wonder if it's just a rolling back of discounts entirely. This is what's unclear. It seems like it might be a more targeted removal of discounts for like premium games that people really want to spend money on. And so they're like, we're not going to discount this stuff because people will pay full price. maybe for things that are a little bit less like AAA, everybody wants it, maybe those will still have discounts. I don't know. I don't think there's like a full clear picture with that. We're just saying that there have been people that have been doing the digging and they've noticed that discounts have been removed. That's a super easy thing for them to revoke, or rather reinstate, to add that value back. But, we're just kind of reading the tea leaves, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think the most interesting thing, Aaron, as we hurtle towards the close here.
Yes, indeed.
Is this isn't happening in a vacuum. This is happening in a post-tariff world where every single console manufacturer, so Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, they've all increased their console price. Now, what's unique about Microsoft is they've increased their console price 2 times. I believe the first wave, they increased the console price. I mean, there's so many models at this point. For like the sake of not making this confusing, their consoles have gotten either somewhere between $80 to $120 more expensive, depending on the version. That was based on the first hardware price increase that happened in May of 2025. In September, they increased their prices again by anywhere between $20 to $70. And it's like most of these other companies, Nintendo, Sony, have increased their price. And some of those price increases have been fairly large, but they have not increased their price twice. And just based on the numbers that we're seeing here and then comparing it to the numbers that we were able to find online for both Nintendo and PlayStation, Xbox has increased their hardware price the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so regardless of whether that's legitimate, right? Because who knows, maybe because of the supply chain and where they get all of their different components for the consoles, maybe that's a very valid price increase. I think it really positions them poorly when they're already behind on console sales.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't make any sense. And then they're increasing the price of the subscription, which again makes their subscription service look a lot worse than whatever Nintendo and PlayStation have. And my question is just like, what the fuck are you doing? And also they wanted to charge $80 for games, which obviously Nintendo kind of started. But there's a difference between originally saying you're going to charge $70 for Outer Worlds and then saying, just kidding, we're going to charge $80 after Nintendo says that Mario Kart World and some of their other games are going to be $80. It's just like Microsoft just looks like this gluttonous, greedy piece of shit company right now. And I don't understand why they're doing it, because they're pricing themselves out of the competition.
Yeah. I think that was also going to be my not closing salvo, like final thoughts wise, but my final topic of discussion for the next few minutes is the why of this, right? Because again, certain elements of this are justifiable, in my opinion, right? I think you can make an argument. You can definitely make an argument that tariffs and general market conditions have necessitated an increase in hardware costs, right? Because a lot of the time, hardware manufacturers almost have to come either dangerously close, unless they're Nintendo, either have to come dangerously close to, or just accept the fact that they will be over the line of selling their hardware at a loss for the sake of recouping that value through software sales. That's just kind of the reality of tech hardware. And it's a very complicated ecosystem that candidly I don't understand nearly well enough to speak on it authoritatively. So I get the hardware increases within reason. But the rest of the software price increasing is so bewildering in terms of strategy. It demands speculation, which is never great, because speculation usually doesn't lead to, let's say, charitable reads on why something is happening. In my mind, the increasing of the hardware price more so than the competition speaks to the fact that they already know they're being outpaced. Like, Xbox hardware sales are dog shit. That's been the case now for 2 full console cycles.
Scientifically, it's known as dog shit.
Scientifically, it's known as dog shit. Leading economists say dog shit.
Yeah.
And I could spend 2 hours talking about why that is the case. And that would be a lot of fun for me, but it would waste a bunch of time. It kind of reeks. The hardware thing kind of reeks of a combination of desperation and I don't know, fuck it, as a mentality where it's like, well, we're already super far behind. We might as well recoup what we can from the people who are still willing to buy our hardware.
Yeah.
Because that is a narrower and narrower market by the day. So why not just narrow it further, but extract more money from the people you are going to catch? And then in terms of the software side, it's bewildering because Sarah Bond said during the Tokyo Game Show, I believe you had down here in the notes, that Xbox Game Pass is profitable, right? Having made $5 billion over the last fiscal year, and the overall market cap for Microsoft as a giant, conglomerate that's playing in every conceivable space is in the trillions. So it's not like they're losing money, and it's not like they're specifically losing money on their games division or on Game Pass specifically. So why are they increasing the price, and why are they doing it in such significant amounts so rapidly? You and I, Zach, had kind of speculated that it might be because, especially on console, they have basically hit saturation, where there just aren't enough new players accessing Game Pass from dedicated Xbox hardware.
Yeah.
There just aren't enough people who don't already have it to continue scaling based on volume, not price. So they need to extract more value from their existing user base, which may go some, distance in explaining why the price hike for PC Game Pass is less substantial than the price hike for straightforward Game Pass. The software sales thing also just sort of reeks of number must go up, because I don't know. Are they trying to make up for losses in their hardware division? Are they just trying to extract more value from the people they already have in their ecosystem because they can't draw more people into their ecosystem because the hardware doesn't sell? I don't know. I wasn't invited to the board meeting, but it's hard not to kind of look at those as compelling explanations in lieu of, any actual information coming out of Xbox. Because, obviously they wouldn't tell us anyway, right? Their whole thing has to be very positive and has to be very value positive for the player. We've added value, and that's why it's going up. It may not be value you want, but it's value.
They're listening, Aaron. They've said they're listening, so clearly they are listening. This is what the subscribers of Game Pass want. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I believe that on the hardware side, it's really difficult because we don't know what their posture from a manufacturing perspective is. It's very possible that they just were manufacturing in regions that Donald Trump decided to hit with higher tariffs, and that as a result of that, they were in a worse position than both Sony and Nintendo. It's really difficult to know. I do think there is a world. Oh, sorry.
Said I find that slightly unlikely, but it is possible.
Again, I'm being charitable here, but I think it's probably more likely that they've run some calculations on what they think people that are big Xbox fans will spend on an Xbox, and they're like, well, we're already behind. Let's just make this thing more expensive, and we'll sell as many units as we're going to sell, but we'll make more money per unit. Like, there's math you can do for this, right? Like, these people are smart enough to do the math, whatever. when it comes to the software side, I 100% think it is a saturation thing. We talked about this in the original episode. It's a classic subscription model thing. You start the subscription at a really low price. You get people on because the value is just too good. You run it at a loss for a while so that you can, grow your business. You show all this growth to all your stakeholders. You're like, oh, look, Game Pass is growing by X amount, blah, 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 blah. Once you run out of people that you can onboard and get more revenue in that way, you increase the price of the subscription, and that's how you show growth. And I think that's 100% what we're seeing here. And I think that's illustrated, again, by the fact that we didn't mention this until this exact moment, but there is PC Game Pass. PC Game Pass, I believe, was $12. Maybe it was $14. I'm too lazy to look at my notes. I know now that I believe it's $16 or $17. They are not increasing the price of PC Game Pass to the same degree as they are for the console version of Game Pass. What that says to me is they don't want to scare off PC players from entering into the ecosystem. They want to keep getting more and more people because that's their growth area. Their growth area is PC, not people playing on console. And so once they get enough saturation in that PC market, they're going to do the exact same thing. More realistically, they're probably going to get rid of PC Game Pass and just make everybody go to another version of it. So, I don't even think that's particularly conspiratorial. I just think that's what they're doing. It's either that or they're lying and they're not making enough money. Like it's got to be one of the two things. Is like either they need more money for this to be a sustainable thing, which actually came out. It wasn't the FCC. It was when they were being criticized for their original Game Pass price increase. The FTC was talking with them and had some concerns about their price increase. This was part of them buying Blizzard. Game Pass was scrutinized as a part of that process. So I don't know, man. I think they're either lying about it being as profitable as they are, as it is, or this is just like a classic capitalism, fucks over everything nice in the world.
Yeah. For me, in terms of motivation, I think the least conspiratorial option is that they're at saturation on console, and that $16.50 a month for PC Game Pass is the canary in the coal mine for me. It's a modest price increase, but it is nearly half the price of the other service. They're clearly pacing these two things differently because one of them is in adoption mode and the other one is in extraction mode. Mainline Game Pass is trying to extract more value from its customers, and PC Game Pass is still trying to draw more users into the ecosystem to get them hooked before they can ratchet the price up. And I mean, like, from the perspective of a suit in a boardroom, that's a great strategy. From the perspective of people who are also trying to afford groceries and, childcare and still have a couple of dollars left over to spend some time with a hobby, it's not a great strategy. And I think that's sort of my closing thought as we progress through this. I was a Game Pass subscriber for just a handful of months after I got my Series X. I liked the service. I thought it was really cool. At the price point where it was then, I could have seen myself continuing to pay for it for the foreseeable future because it genuinely did add a bunch of value, and more importantly, and for me specifically, someone who splits his time between a Steam Deck and a Switch and a PlayStation 5, it drew me back to my Xbox. It made the Xbox my primary console for a little while because I had access to stuff that I just wouldn't have had access to otherwise. But eventually I moved away from that. I canceled my Game Pass subscription, I think right around the time of the previous price hike. And I just haven't gone back, and I'm certainly not going to be paying $30 a month. $30 a month for this current iteration of Game Pass. It's just not a good value to me specifically anymore. Because again, value is very difficult to quantify. It is different for each person depending on a variety of factors. But the general consensus, as I've seen before I pass it off to you, is that, yeah, it doesn't seem to be ringing as a huge win for Xbox, considering the cancellation page for Game Pass did crash because of the volume of people who flooded to it to try and cancel their Game Pass subscription. I don't know what that indicates in terms of overall subscriber counts diminishing. I don't think Xbox has or will be responding to that unless things get like really, really bad for them. But yeah, people have made it known in a tangible way that this might have been a bridge too far, and Xbox may have just overplayed their hand. I know, yeah, for me, the value is not there. For enough people to crash a website, the value is also not there. But I don't know, we'll just kind of have to see how this plays out in the long term, what it means for Xbox as a brand, what it means for Game Pass as a service, what it means for Game Pass's impact on the industry at large for the foreseeable future. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to keep an eye on here as this progresses through the next year or two.
Yeah, I mean, I think in closing, I would just say I think Game Pass is a great service, excluding the price, right? I think Game Pass is a fantastic thing. I'm happy to support it. I think that I don't know how people get paid based on it. I haven't seen a lot of those numbers. I don't know what those deals look like. I think that there's a whole other side that's obfuscated from the consumer angle, but as a consumer product, it is so much value. It is super dope. I will just say that that does not mean that they can charge whatever they want for it. There are two sides to the coin. One is the actual value they're generating, and the other side is how much do you have to pay for that. And I think that they are certainly approaching a point where they are charging too much for the value that you actually get out of the service. And what I'll be interested to see is that being driven all of this is technically being entirely driven by stakeholders and capitalism and the stock market and whatever. But I'll be curious to see if Game Pass is actually a model that has legs, if it can survive, if it will be there in 10 years, if it will be there in 20 years, or if it's just not a sustainable business model that actually makes everyone money. Because I think that's the question now. Is this making money? Is this actually sustainable? Or is it you're just doing the normal capitalist thing of like, I want more money? It's like, oh yeah, no, we're making a bunch of money. Our profit margin's really good, but fuck you, we need more. I'll be curious to see what happens. I don't really know the answer. What I do know, though, is that Mosscat Market is dope. Yes, this is the part of the show that we plug our bullshit. And when I say bullshit, I mean the people that have helped us in life.
Yeah, the real value is the friends we made along the way.
Yeah. And one of those friends is Mosscat Market. You can make sure to check out Mosscat Market on both Etsy and on Instagram. Mosscat Market, of course, is the wonderful artist that helped us with our logo, album art, all of that stuff in the beginning. And so we just like to plug them. You should show some support, show some love. That's Mosscat Market on Instagram and Etsy.
Yes, indeed. And similarly, I would like to extend a wholehearted thank you to Beach Girl, the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful creator of not just our intro and outro music, which, as I've said recently and many times before, is my favorite part of the editing process, is getting to listen to that part on repeat, but also the creative mind behind a wonderful library of music that you can find anywhere digital music can be found. That's Spotify, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, YouTube, and just about any other platform of such ilk. So that is, of course, Beach Girl. Treat your ears to some good tunes.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We appreciate you as always. And until next time, bye.
Indeed.
Goodbye.
leading economists say dog shit.